Billionaire dropped her card at the party. But what the street girl did moved everyone. Victoria Reynolds had always gotten everything she wanted in life: money, power, respect. But she never imagined that a gala night at the Plaza Hotel would change everything, much less that this change would come from the small hands of a girl she hadn't even noticed was there. It was when the gold card slipped from her designer bag. Victoria didn't even notice the object falling while adjusting her Italian silk dress and talking with business people about her latest million-dollar acquisition. The card slid across the polished marble floor, going unnoticed by the guests' expensive shoes. But it didn't go unnoticed by Lily, who was pressing her nose against the hotel entrance glass, watching that distant world with curious eyes. The 9-year-old girl held a bunch of white roses she'd been trying to sell for hours. Her fingers were cold in the New York winter night, and the brown hoodie she wore, too big for her thin body, did little to protect her from the wind. She saw the golden glimmer on the floor, and something inside her knew it was important. Not because of the color or value, but because she'd learned from her mother that people's things should always return to them. Lily hesitated at the entrance. The doorman had just sent her away for the 3rd time that night, but the card was there, discarded, forgotten. The girl looked at the flowers in her hand, then at the lit ballroom beyond the glass doors. She took a deep breath and entered. The ballroom was decorated with floral arrangements that cost more than Lily would earn selling flowers for an entire year. Crystal chandeliers hung from the high ceiling, reflecting light on evening gowns and tailored suits. The air smelled of expensive perfumes and imported wine. Lily felt very small inside, as if she'd entered a world not made for people like her. She walked slowly among the guests, holding the gold card carefully. Some looked at her with surprise, others with evident disapproval. A white-haired lady pulled her purse closer when Lily passed. A man in a grey suit discreetly gestured for security. "Miss, where's your mother?" asked a woman in a red dress, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Lily didn't answer. She was looking for the card's owner, and was certain she'd know who it was when she saw her. Her eyes scanned the ballroom until she found a tall woman with dark hair tied in an elegant bun, laughing loudly while gesturing to a group of people around her. It was her. Lily didn't know how she knew, but she knew. Victoria was in the middle of a story about how she'd managed to close an important deal when she felt a light touch on her arm. Annoyed by the interruption, she turned ready to dismiss whoever it was, but stopped when she saw the child before her. "What are you doing here?" Victoria's voice came out harsher than intended. "You dropped this." Lily extended the card but kept her fingers firmly on it. The murmuring around them began immediately. Victoria recognized her black credit card, the one she used for her most exclusive purchases. She reached out to take it, but the girl didn't let go. "It's my card. You can return it now." Victoria spoke through her teeth, trying to maintain composure before the guests who were now watching the scene with growing interest. "How do I know it's yours?" Lily asked, her voice steady despite her pounding heart. Victoria blinked, surprised. Nobody questioned her like that, least of all a dirty street child in the middle of her gala party. "Are you questioning me?" "My mother always says we have to be sure before giving people's things back. It might not be yours." One of the business people beside Victoria let out a muffled laugh. Another person muttered something about the audacity of kids these days. Victoria felt her face grow hot. How dare that girl cause a scene like this at her own event? "Security," she called, but Margaret, her assistant, was already by her side. "Victoria, maybe it's better to just prove the card is yours," Margaret suggested quietly, her experienced eyes reading the situation clearly. Making a scene would only make things worse. Victoria clenched her teeth. Margaret was right, as always. With the utmost reluctance, she recited the card numbers. Lily listened carefully, checking with her eyes the digits engraved on the gold card. Only then did she release the card. "There, it really is yours." Victoria grabbed the card tightly, putting it in her purse with a sharp movement. She took some bills from her wallet and held them out to the girl. "Here, now go away." Lily looked at the money. They were $100 bills, more than she usually made in a whole week selling flowers. Her hand moved instinctively toward the money, but then stopped. She remembered her mother's voice. Never take anything that isn't yours. Always return what you find. Always be honest. I don't want your money, Lily said, gently pushing Victoria's hand away. I just wanted a glass of water, if I may. The silence that followed was absolute. All eyes were fixed on the scene. A poor child refusing money and asking only for water. That made no sense to anyone there. Victoria stood frozen, the money still held out in the air. Something about that simple gesture disturbed her deeply. She was used to people who wanted everything from her, who asked for more and more, who never had enough. But that girl wanted nothing but water. Margaret, get her some water, Victoria ordered, her voice coming out softer than she intended. Margaret disappeared for a moment and returned with a crystal glass full of ice-cold water. Lily took the glass with both hands, as if it were something precious, and drank slowly. Victoria watched how the girl savored every sip, as if it were the most important thing in the world. "What's your name?" Victoria heard herself asking. "Lily." "And where is your mother, Lily?" "At home. She's not well." Before Victoria could ask more, Margaret approached and whispered something in her ear. Victoria looked at the assistant with surprise, then back at the girl. "Is your last name Wilson?" Lily nodded. "Yes." "Is Patricia Wilson your mother?" "Yes, ma'am. Do you know her?" Victoria felt as if the floor had been pulled out from under her feet. Patricia, that name she had tried to forget for so many years, that ghost that haunted her on the nights she was alone in her huge, empty mansion. Patricia, her best childhood friend, the sister she never had, the person she had betrayed in the worst way possible. "I do," Victoria answered, her voice barely a whisper. The guests began to disperse, returning to their conversations and drinks, the momentary entertainment of the strange girl already losing its interest. But Victoria couldn't take her eyes off Lily. She saw traces of Patricia there, in the determined eyes, the stubborn forehead, the way she lifted her chin when she spoke. "How is your mother?" Victoria asked, though part of her was afraid of the answer. "She's sick. The doctors say it's a tough illness, but she'll get better. She always gets better." Something in the way Lily said that, with a forced confidence that barely hid the fear underneath, made Victoria's heart tighten. Margaret gently touched her arm. "Victoria, I tried to tell you. Patricia is very sick. I tried several times over the last few months, but you were always too busy to listen." Victoria looked at her assistant, seeing the veiled accusation there. Margaret was 62 years old and had worked with her for over a decade. She wasn't just an employee, she was practically the only person Victoria Reynolds considered close to a friend, and Margaret was saying she had tried to warn her about Patricia. "Why didn't you insist more?" Victoria asked, knowing it wasn't Margaret's fault, but needing to blame someone. "I did insist. You didn't want to listen. You said the past was the past and you didn't have time for that. The words were true and they hurt." Victoria had built a business empire over the years, but she had done so by closing doors, cutting ties, distancing herself from everything that wasn't directly profitable. And Patricia was one of those closed doors, a cut tie, a memory she preferred not to revisit. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. "Lily, where do you live?" Victoria asked, already knowing she wouldn't like the answer. "In Hope Gardens, do you know it?" Victoria knew. It was a slum a few miles away, a place she passed by car every day on her way to the office without ever really looking. It was the kind of place that existed on the periphery of her consciousness, present but ignored, real but not real enough to matter. "I need to go home now," Lily said, placing the empty glass on a nearby table. "My mom will be worried." "Wait." Victoria gently held the girl's arm. There was something she needed to know, something that had been bothering her since the girl refused the money. "Why didn't you take the money? You clearly need it." Lily looked at her with those eyes too serious for a child. "Because it wasn't mine. I just returned what was yours. We can't take things just because we need them. We have to earn them right or things have no value." They were Patricia's words. Victoria recognized her friend's philosophy, that irritating honesty Patricia always had, that refusal to cut corners or make moral compromises even when life got tough. It was precisely because of that honesty that Victoria had been able to betray her so easily years ago. "Let me take you home," Victoria heard herself saying. "You don't have to, ma'am, I know the way. I insist, it's late and it's not safe for a child to walk alone." Lily hesitated, but something in Victoria's face made her agree. Maybe it was the sadness she saw there, so deep that all the money in the world couldn't hide it. Or maybe it was because her mother always said that Victoria had been good, once, a long time ago. Victoria's driver was visibly surprised when she got into the car with the girl in the dirty brown hoodie. But he said nothing. Margaret got in too, sitting next to Victoria in the back seat, while Lily settled in the front, marveling at the car's luxurious interior. The drive to Hope Gardens was made in silence. Victoria looked out the window, seeing the city gradually change, the tall buildings giving way to lower constructions, the well-lit streets becoming dark alleys, order giving way to the organized chaos of the outskirts. It was a different world, and yet it was only 20 minutes away from her life of luxury. Lily gave directions through the narrow streets of the slum. The driver drove slowly, careful with the children playing despite the hour, with the loose dogs, with the potholes in the street. People looked at the imported car with curiosity and suspicion. It wasn't common to see cars like that there. "It's that one there." Lily pointed to a small brick house with a worn wooden door and barred windows. There was a flower pot on the windowsill, an attempt at beauty amid the harshness. Victoria got out of the car before she could change her mind. Margaret followed her, instinctively pulling her bag closer to her body. Lily opened the door and went in, calling for her mother. "Mom, I'm home. And I brought a visitor." The response came in the form of a hoarse cough that made Victoria Reynolds shudder. She entered behind Lily, her eyes needing a moment to adjust to the dim light inside the house. The space was tiny, one room serving as both living room and kitchen, with a curtain separating what must have been the bedroom. It was clean, carefully arranged, but poverty was in every detail, in the patched furniture, the peeling walls, the smell of dampness that no amount of cleaning could completely eliminate. And then Victoria saw her. Patricia was sitting in a plastic chair, a blanket over her shoulders despite the stifling heat inside the house. She was much thinner than Victoria remembered, her bones prominent in her face, her skin with a yellowish tone that indicated serious illness. But the eyes were the same, those gentle brown eyes that Victoria knew so well, those eyes that knew her better than anyone. Their gazes met and time stopped. "Hi, Patty," Victoria said, her voice cracking on the last syllable. Patricia brought a hand to her lips, her eyes filling with tears. "Vicky? Is it really you, or am I dreaming again?" "It's me." Lily looked from one to the other, confused. She had never seen her mother cry like that, with that mix of joy and pain that made no sense to a 9-year-old. Margaret stood still at the door, a silent witness to a reunion she knew was important, even without understanding the whole story. Victoria took a step toward Patricia, then another. Her high-heeled shoes seemed ridiculous there, her party dress completely out of place in that environment. She knelt in front of her friend, not minding the cold cement floor, and took Patricia's hands in hers. The hands were cold and very thin, the bones visible under the skin. "Patty, I'm so sorry," Victoria whispered. "For what?" "For coming to see me." Patricia tried to smile, but the expression was weak. For everything I did, for everything I didn't do." Patricia squeezed Victoria's hands lightly. "Water under the bridge, Vicky." "It's not water under the bridge. It's the present. Look at you, look at this house, look at your daughter selling flowers on the street. And I could have helped. I should have helped. You didn't know." "Yes, I did. Margaret tried to tell me. I didn't want to listen." The silence that followed was heavy. Lily approached her mother, placing a hand on her shoulder protectively. That simple gesture made Victoria realize how much she had lost by distancing herself from Patricia. Not just a friend, but the chance to know that extraordinary girl, to be part of something real and true. "How are you?" "Really?" Victoria asked, though she could see the answer on her friend's face. "The doctors say I have a liver disease. It's advanced. They talk about a transplant, but—" Patricia shrugged, the gesture saying more than words could. "But what?" But I can't afford a transplant, Vicky. I can barely afford the medicine to hold back the pain. Lily sells flowers, and I do odd jobs when I can, but it's not enough. Victoria felt anger growing inside her. Not anger at Patricia, but at herself, at the system, at the glaring injustice of living in a country where people died for lack of money, while others spent fortunes on parties and expensive clothes. "I'll pay for it," Victoria said firmly. "No." The word was spoken with such force that even Lily jumped in surprise. "Patty, don't be proud now. You need help and I can help." "I don't want your help," Patricia said, her voice soft but unyielding. "Not like this." "What do you mean? Do you want to die out of pride?" "I want to live with dignity," Patricia corrected. "You hurt me deeply, Vicky. You took everything we built together and threw it away like it meant nothing. You took our plans, our dreams, and used it all to build your empire, leaving me with nothing. And now you want to show up here and fix everything with money?" The words were harsh, but they weren't spoken with anger. It was just the truth, raw and painful. Victoria felt every word like a stab, but she knew she deserved each one. "I know I was terrible. I know there's no excuse for what I did, but please, let me at least try to make up for it a little. Let me pay for your treatment." Patricia looked at her for a long moment, her eyes scanning Victoria's face as if searching for something. "Have you really changed, or are you just feeling guilty?" The question caught Victoria off guard. She opened her mouth to answer, but realized she didn't know the answer. Had she changed? Or was she just trying to ease her conscience? "I don't know," she admitted. "Honestly, I don't know. But I want to find out, and I want you to be alive to see it." Patricia coughed again, a deep cough that bent her over. Lily quickly grabbed a glass of water and helped her mother drink. When the coughing passed, Patricia looked at Victoria again. "If I accept your help, it will be with conditions. Whatever you want. I want you to spend a week living like we live. I want you to leave that world of luxury and come here to reality. I want you to understand what it's like to wake up not knowing if there will be food on the table, what it's like to choose between buying medicine or paying the light bill, what it's like to look at your daughter and not know how you're going to protect her from the world." Victoria felt her heart race. A week? There? The idea was absurd, impractical. She had important meetings, deals to close, people depending on her. "Patty, I can't just drop everything for a week." "Then I can't accept your help. This is emotional blackmail." "It's not blackmail, it's an offer. You want to help me? Help me by first learning why I need help. Come see what life is like here, not as a tourist stopping by to feel better, but really living it." Margaret, who had remained silent until then, finally spoke. "Victoria, maybe she's right." Victoria looked at her assistant with surprise. "You think I should do this?" "I think you need to do this, not for Patricia, but for you. You've spent years building higher and higher walls around yourself, moving further and further away from the real world. Maybe it's time to tear down some of those walls." Victoria looked from Margaret to Patricia, then to Lily. The girl watched her with those serious eyes, waiting to see what she would do, and Victoria realized that this was a crossroads. She could simply force her help, pay for everything without getting involved, return to her comfortable life with her conscience eased. Or she could do what Patricia was asking, which was frightening and uncomfortable and completely outside her comfort zone. "1 week," Victoria finally said, "and then you'll accept my help?" "1 week," Patricia agreed, "and then we'll see what to do." It was the most promise Victoria would get, and she knew it. She took a deep breath, already regretting her decision, but unable to back out now. "When do I start?" "Tomorrow," Lily said, a small smile appearing on her face for the first time. "There's a lot to do tomorrow." Victoria returned home that night with more questions than answers. Her apartment on Park Avenue seemed even emptier than usual, colder despite the central heating, more lifeless despite the expensive decor. She stood on the balcony looking out at the city lights, thinking about how everything had changed in just a few hours. Margaret had stayed with her, knowing that Victoria needed to talk. "Do you think I'm crazy?" Victoria asked, not taking her eyes off the city. "I think you're finally doing something real." "I don't know if I can. A whole week there." I don't know how to live like that, Margaret. Nobody knows until they learn, and you've always been good at learning. Victoria laughed humorlessly. I learned how to make money. I don't know if that qualifies me to live in a slum. You'll learn more in 1 week there than you've learned in all these years building your empire, Margaret said with conviction. And maybe you'll finally discover what really matters. Victoria turned to look at her assistant. Why did you never give up on me? All these years working with me, watching me make terrible decisions, hurt people, be selfish and arrogant. Why did you stay? Margaret smiled, a sad but genuine smile. Because I saw who you were before all this money. I saw the girl who wanted to change the world, who had dreams bigger than herself. And I always believed that girl was still there somewhere, waiting to come back. The tears finally came, streaming down Victoria's face uncontrollably. She hadn't cried in years, had forgotten what it was like to release that emotion. Margaret hugged her, letting her cry, saying nothing because there was nothing to say. Sometimes crying was the only appropriate response. The next morning, Victoria woke up early for the first time in years by her own will, not because she had appointments. She packed a small bag with simple clothes, feeling ridiculous choosing what to bring. What did one wear to spend a week in a slum? She decided on sweatpants, basic t-shirts, and comfortable sneakers, leaving behind the designer dresses and high heels. Margaret was waiting for her in the living room, already ready. Are you coming with me? Victoria asked, surprised. Someone needs to make sure you don't give up on the first day. They arrived at Hope Gardens when the sun was just beginning to rise. The slum was waking up, people heading out to work, children already playing in the streets, street vendors starting to set up their stalls. It was a world in constant motion, full of life, in a way Victoria's apartment never was. Lily was waiting for them at the door of her house, her face lit up with excitement. Good morning. My mum is a little better today. She's waiting for you. Victoria entered the house, which seemed even smaller in the daylight. Patricia was sitting in the same chair as yesterday, but there was more color in her face and her eyes seemed more alert. So you really came? I promised I would. Many people promise things. Few follow through. The words weren't said with malice, just as fact. Victoria swallowed the defensive response she wanted to give and just nodded. So, how does this work? Do I just stay here for a week? No, Lily said, jumping excitedly. You're going to do what we do. You're going to sell flowers with me today. Victoria looked at Patricia, hoping it was a joke, but her friend just smiled. You heard. Lily is going to be your teacher today. The idea of selling flowers on the street was so absurd that Victoria almost laughed. But then she saw the serious expression on Patricia's face and realized she was serious. I don't know how to sell flowers. I'll teach you, Lily assured, already grabbing a bucket with roses. It's easy. We go to the traffic light near the mall and offer them to people in their cars. You'll see, it's cool. Cool wasn't the word Victoria would use. Terrifying, maybe. Humiliating, certainly. But she had promised, and there was still a trace of honor in her that didn't allow breaking promises. Margaret stayed with Patricia, while Victoria followed Lily outside. The girl walked quickly through the narrow streets, greeting neighbors who knew her, stopping to pet dogs, showing a deep knowledge of her community. Victoria followed her, feeling more and more out of place. They reached the traffic light after 20 minutes of walking. Lily positioned the bucket of flowers and explained the strategy. When the light turns red, we approach the cars. Always smile, always speak politely. Don't insist too much if the person says no, but don't give up too quickly either. And always, always give the correct change. Victoria watched as Lily demonstrated, approaching a car with a couple inside. She saw how the girl smiled, how she offered the flowers kindly, how she accepted refusal with grace. At the third car, she managed to sell a rose. Now you try, Lily said, gently nudging Victoria. The light turned red. Victoria took a deep breath and approached a black car. The woman at the wheel rolled down the window, looking at her in surprise. Victoria realized too late that the woman recognized her, probably from some business magazine or social event. Victoria Reynolds? Selling flowers? Victoria felt her face burn, but forced a smile. Yes. Would you like to buy a rose? Is this some kind of advertising campaign? One of those CEO for a day on the street things? No, it's just me selling flowers. The woman laughed, a sharp laugh that made Victoria want to disappear. I have to post this. She grabbed her phone and took a picture before Victoria could react. My followers are going to love this. The light turned green and the car drove off. Victoria stood still, trembling, feeling the humiliation burn in her veins. Lily approached, touching her arm gently. It happens sometimes. People are mean, but you can't let that stop you. She took a picture. She's going to spread it around. So what? Are you doing something wrong? Are you stealing? Are you hurting someone? No, but then it doesn't matter what she thinks. What matters is what you know is true. The words of a 9-year-old should never carry so much weight, but they did. Victoria looked at Lily, seeing the strength in those young eyes, the wisdom that came from living a hard life with dignity. You're right, Victoria said, picking up a rose from the bucket. Let's try again. The day was long and hard. Victoria had to deal with constant rejections, with looks of pity or contempt, with the heat of the sun and the weariness in her feet. She sold only 3 roses in 6 hours, while Lily sold 15. At the end of the day, when they counted the money, Victoria was shocked to realize they had earned only $45. That's it? She asked, disbelieving. It's a good day, Lily replied, smiling. Sometimes we earn less, $45. Victoria spent that on a cup of coffee in her office, and that girl and her mother had to live on that, stretch every dollar, make impossible choices about where to spend. When they returned home, Patricia was waiting for them with food, rice, beans and fried eggs, simple but prepared with care. Margaret had already left, promising to return the next day, leaving Victoria alone with Patricia and Lily. How was it? Patricia asked as they ate. Humiliating, tiring, frustrating. Welcome to our world. Victoria looked at her plate, at the simple food that suddenly seemed the most delicious thing she had ever eaten, perhaps because she was genuinely tired and hungry in a way she hadn't experienced in years. How do you do this every day? Because we have no choice, Patricia answered, and because at the end of the day we have each other, and that's worth more than any amount of money. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. That night, Victoria slept on a thin mattress on the floor next to Lily's bed. The mattress was uncomfortable. The house was too hot. There were constant noises from the street. But somehow she slept better than she had in months in her king-size bed with linen sheets. The following days were a continuous shock of reality. On the second day, Lily took her to help Mrs. Jenkins, a 68-year-old woman who made a living by washing clothes for others. Victoria spent the day scrubbing stubborn stains, wringing out heavy sheets, hanging clothes in the sun. Her hands, always so well cared for, became red and rough. Her back hurt in a way she didn't know was possible. Mrs. Jenkins was a small, energetic woman, with greying hair tied in a bun and eyes that seemed to see right through people. She didn't treat Victoria as special, didn't make the work easier, didn't feel sorry for her. She just put her to work as she would with anyone else. You're the billionaire who gave up on Patricia, right? Mrs. Jenkins asked bluntly in the middle of the day. Victoria stopped, her hands still on a wet sheet. Is that what you were told? No one needs to tell me. I have eyes and ears. But I also know you came back. That counts for something. I came back too late. It's never too late as long as the person is still alive, Mrs. Jenkins said wisely. The mistake was coming back to ease your conscience. Redemption only comes when you do the right things without expecting anything in return. And how do I know the difference? You'll only know by trying. On the third day, Patricia had a crisis. The pain became unbearable, and there was no money for more medicine. Victoria watched, feeling completely helpless, as Lily ran to ask the neighbors for help. A man brought some pills left over from when his wife was sick. A woman prepared a special tea that her grandmother always said helped with pain. The community came together to help, each giving a little of what they had. It was so different from Victoria's world, where people hoarded resources and hid their vulnerabilities. Here everyone knew each other's struggles and helped not out of obligation, but out of shared need and genuine compassion. "Why won't you let me pay for a doctor?" Victoria begged Patricia after the pain had finally subsided. "Because I need to know you understand before I accept your help," Patricia replied, her voice weak. "I need to know you won't just throw money at the problem and go back to your perfect life." "My life isn't perfect." "No, you have everything. Money, power, success. But I have nothing that matters. I have no real friends, no family, no purpose beyond making more money. You have less than nothing in material terms, but you have Lily, you have this community, you have love. Who really has more?" Patricia looked at her for a long moment. "You're starting to understand." On the fourth day, Margaret appeared with news that Victoria feared. Her photo selling flowers had gone viral on social media. People were speculating about what had happened, whether her company was failing, if it was a nervous breakdown, if it was a publicity stunt. The shareholders were nervous, wanting answers. "You need to make a statement," Margaret said. "The board is threatening to vote you out if you don't show up." Victoria looked around Patricia's small house, at Lily doing her homework on the floor, at her friend sleeping in her chair, exhausted from the pain. She looked at her own hands, calloused from work, at her simple clothes, at the life she'd been living for the past few days. "Let them vote," she said finally. "Victoria, you can't be serious." "I am. If they can't trust me for a week, then they don't deserve my leadership. And if losing everything is the price of finally doing something right, then so be it." Margaret smiled, and Victoria realized it was the first time she had seen her assistant smile genuinely in years. "You're really changing." "I'm trying. I still don't know if it will work, but I'm trying." On the fifth day, Victoria woke up to Lily gently shaking her. "Wake up. There's something important to do today." "What?" "It's my mother's birthday. We're going to have a party." Victoria looked around, confused. "A party? How? With what money?" But Lily was already excited, explaining the plans. The neighbors would each contribute a little. Someone would make a cake. Another would bring soda, another would decorate. It was a collective effort, each person giving a small piece to create something bigger. Victoria spent the day helping with the preparations. She helped decorate with little flags made from old newspaper, helped make snacks with what was in the pantry, helped arrange the borrowed chairs in a circle in the shared backyard. There was nothing luxurious there, nothing expensive or impressive, but there was human warmth. There was genuine laughter. There was joy that didn't need money to exist. When Patricia was led to the backyard and saw the surprise party, she cried, not from sadness, but from pure happiness. Victoria saw in that moment everything she had lost by choosing money over human connections. She saw what really mattered. The party was simple but memorable. People told stories, sang songs, danced even without proper music. Patricia was weak but happy, smiling in a way Victoria hadn't seen in years. Lily was radiant, running among the guests, absorbing the love everyone had for her family. In the middle of the party, Mrs. Jenkins approached Victoria. "Do you know what the greatest gift you can give Patricia is? A liver transplant? No, it's being the friend she remembers, the girl who dreamed of changing the world for the better, not for the richer. That's the Vicky she wants back. I don't know if that girl still exists." "She does. I've seen her these past few days. She was just buried under a pile of money and ego, but she's coming out again." That night, after everyone had left and Lily was asleep, Victoria and Patricia stayed up talking. It was the first real conversation they'd had since reuniting, without guards up, without defensiveness. "Remember when we were young?" Patricia began, her voice soft in the darkness. "We had that crazy plan to start a business together." "I remember. We wanted to create a company that was profitable but also ethical, that proved it was possible to make money without exploiting people. And then you decided it was easier to do it the traditional way." "I was weak. I was greedy. I saw the shortcut and took it, even though I knew I was betraying you in the process." Patricia was silent for a moment. "You took our entire business plan and sold it to that investor as if it were only yours. You didn't even mention my name." When I tried to talk about our partnership, you cut me out, said I was having delusions, that I had never been more than an assistant. I know, and I'll never be able to forgive myself for that. I'm not asking you to forgive yourself. I'm saying what happened so we can finally move forward. I carried this hurt for years, let it consume me. And you know what I discovered? It hurt me more than it hurt you. What do you mean? Because you moved on. You built your empire, made your money, lived your life, while I stayed stuck, bitter, refusing to move forward out of pride. I could have built something on my own, but I was too busy feeling like a victim. You're not the villain of this story, Patty. I'm not the villain. But I'm not a helpless victim either. I made choices too. I chose to hold a grudge. I chose to isolate myself. I chose not to ask for help when I needed it out of pride. Victoria felt tears streaming down her face. So we're two proud idiots who wasted years for nothing. Patricia laughed, a weak but genuine laugh. Basically, but it's not too late to change that. How? How do we fix years of mistakes? One day at a time, starting now. On the 6th day, Victoria finally told Patricia about her company, about the questionable decisions she had made over the years, about the ethical shortcuts, about the people she had stepped on to climb higher. It was a painful but necessary confession. Patricia listened without interrupting. When Victoria finished, exhausted and ashamed, Patricia finally spoke. You can fix this. Not everything, some things are too late. But you can start doing things differently now. How? Change your company. Not all at once, gradually. Start paying fair wages, treating suppliers with respect, doing ethical business. It will hurt financially at first, but in the long run, it builds something sustainable. The shareholders will hate me. They already hate you. At least this way you'll hate yourself less. Victoria laughed, despite the seriousness of the moment. When did you get so wise? When I had to survive with almost nothing. Poverty teaches humility fast. Patty, about the treatment. The week is ending. Will you let me help now? Patricia hesitated. I have one last condition. What? I want you to use some of the money you would have spent on me to help other people here in the community too. Not as condescending charity, but as a partner. Invest in small businesses, help people get established, create opportunities. That's not a condition, it's exactly what I want to do. Patricia smiled. Then we have an agreement. On the 7th and final day, Margaret returned with more news. Victoria's story had taken an unexpected turn. Instead of destroying her reputation, it had created a movement. People were talking about social responsibility, about CEOs needing to understand their employees' reality, about the disconnect between rich and poor. You've become a symbol, Margaret said. People are calling you the people's CEO. That's ridiculous. It's powerful. You can use this to make real changes. Victoria thought about this as she spent her last day in Hope Gardens. She had learned so much in a week, more than in years of business schools and leadership courses. She had learned humility, compassion, true strength. She had learned that wealth without purpose was empty, and that purpose without wealth could be painful too. The balance was in using one to serve the other. On the evening of the 7th day, the whole community gathered for a farewell. Not because Victoria was leaving forever, she had promised to return regularly, but because that special week was ending. Mrs. Jenkins stood up to make a speech. When this woman arrived here a week ago, we didn't trust her. She was just another rich person wanting to feel better about herself, but she proved she was here to learn, not to teach us, and that made all the difference. Other neighbors spoke too, sharing observations about how Victoria had changed, how she had worked hard, how she had listened more than she had spoken. It wasn't empty praise, it was genuine recognition of transformation. When it was Victoria's turn to speak, she could barely get the words out from emotion. I came here thinking I was doing a favor, that I was being generous by agreeing to live in poverty for a week. But the truth is you did me a favor. You taught me what I had forgotten. You showed me what really matters. I won't pretend I understand everything about your lives now. A week isn't enough for that. But it was enough to show me that I was living wrong and that I need to change. Lily approached and hugged Victoria tightly. "Are you really coming back?" "I am. I promise." "And will you help my mom?" "I'll do everything I can." The next morning, Victoria returned to her luxurious apartment. But she wasn't the same woman who had left a week earlier. She had calluses on her hands, her muscles ached, her skin was sunburned. But more importantly, her heart had changed. The first thing she did was call her lawyers. "I want to create a fund for medical treatments for low-income people, and I want to start by establishing fair criteria, not based on who I know, but on who needs it most." "Mrs. Reynolds, this will cost millions." "I know, and it's worth every penny." Then she called the board of directors and called an emergency meeting. It was time to make real changes in her company. The meeting was tense. Victoria proposed radical changes: increase salaries, improve working conditions, review contracts with suppliers to ensure ethical practices. The shareholders were horrified by the projected impact on profits. "You're going to bankrupt us," one of them shouted. "No, I'm going to make our company truly sustainable, not just environmentally but humanly sustainable. If you can't see the value in that, feel free to sell your shares." "We'll do exactly that." "Great. I'll buy them." The room fell silent. Victoria was risking everything, but for the first time in years she felt truly alive. Margaret quickly arranged treatment for Patricia. One of the best hepatologists in the country was hired, and detailed tests were done. The situation was serious, but there was hope with proper treatment and possibly a transplant in the future. Victoria visited Hope Gardens 3 times a week now, not as a distant benefactor, but as part of the community. She brought Margaret with her, and together they began mapping needs and opportunities. "Mrs. Williams has sewing skills. We can help her buy a better machine and set up a small business. Old Joe is an excellent mechanic. We can help him open an official workshop. There are 3 women here who make amazing sweets. We can connect them with city cafes and bakeries." They weren't big, dramatic solutions. They were small investments, small helps, small opportunities. But together, they began to make a real difference. Lily continued selling flowers, but now she also went to school regularly. Victoria had become a sort of makeshift aunt, helping with homework, taking the girl on outings, showing her possibilities for the future. "When I grow up, I'm going to be just like you," Lily said one day. "Don't be just like me, be better than me, be who I should have been all along." 2 months after the fateful night of the gala, Patricia had enough strength to finally have the conversation they had both avoided. "Vicky, I need to tell you the whole story about what really happened after you betrayed me." Victoria braced herself, knowing she wouldn't like what she was about to hear. "After you took our plan and ran with it, I was devastated. It wasn't just about the money or the business. It was about trusting someone completely and having that trust destroyed. Patty, Let me finish. I need to say this. I became so bitter that I started sabotaging myself. I rejected other opportunities out of fear of trusting again. I chose bad partners because deep down I thought it was what I deserved. And when I met Lily's father..." Patricia stopped, taking a deep breath. "He wasn't a good man. I won't go into details, but when I found out I was pregnant, he disappeared. And suddenly I was alone, pregnant, with no resources, no support. My parents had already distanced themselves because of my bad choices. I had no one." Victoria felt her heart tighten. "Why didn't you come to me, even after everything?" "Pride, anger, fear. Pick any reason. They're all valid. But mostly, I didn't want you to think I was coming back just because I needed money. I preferred to suffer alone than to give you that satisfaction. That was stupid. It was. But it was my stupid to make. And you know what I found out? That I was stronger than I thought. I had Lily, raised her on my own, gave her the values my parents gave me even when I had nothing else to offer. And I'm proud of that. You should be. Lily is amazing. She is. And part of me thanks you for betraying me, because without that, I would never have learned my own strength. I would never have had Lily. I would never have built the life I built, even though it was hard." Victoria Reynolds didn't know what to say. How do you thank someone for finding strength through their betrayal? I'm not saying what you did was right, Patricia Wilson continued. It was horrible and destructive, but I grew in spite of it, not because of it. And now finally I can truly forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace. The two cried together, finally letting go of years of hurt and guilt. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out, now continuing. In the following months, the changes in Victoria's company began to bear fruit. Initially, profits dropped as expected. Some shareholders left, but others, impressed with the new ethical direction, invested more. New talent started arriving, attracted to a company that was trying to make a real difference. Margaret became not just an assistant, but a full partner in the social initiatives. It turned out she came from a humble family too, but had never spoken about it for fear of seeming weak in a brutal corporate environment. Now, she could use her experience and knowledge to make real change. You know what amazes me the most? Margaret said one day. How all this started with a girl returning a card. Such a small moment, but it changed everything. It wasn't just about the card, Victoria reflected. It was about Lily forcing me to see what I had become. She was 9 years old and had more integrity than I'd accumulated in a whole lifetime. And now I'm trying to learn from her. Patricia's treatment was going well, but slowly. There were good days and bad days. On one of the bad days, Victoria was sitting beside her in the hospital when Patricia finally asked the question they had both avoided. What do you really want from all this, Vicky? What do you mean? All this help, all this change, is it real or are you still just trying to ease your guilt? Victoria thought carefully before answering. In the beginning, it was guilt. I won't lie. But now? Now it's because I've seen another way to live. I saw that having billions in the bank but no one who truly cares about me is empty. I saw community. I saw purpose. I saw real love. And I want that for myself. I can't buy those things. I have to earn them. And I'm trying to do that, the only way I know how, by being better today than I was yesterday. That's a good answer. It's an honest answer. Even better. Lily came running into the hospital room, carrying a bouquet of roses she had sold flowers to buy. Look, Mom, I sold all the flowers today and bought these for you. Patricia's smile lit up the room. They're beautiful, my daughter. Victoria watched the scene, mother and daughter united by love that no money could buy, and knew she had made the right choice in coming back. Not to save Patricia, her friend didn't need saving, but to save herself from the empty life she had built. 6 months after the gala, Victoria's company was in a different place. Not as profitable as before, but more stable, more ethical, more respected. Employees who once lived in fear now had a voice. Suppliers who were once exploited were now fair partners. The culture had completely changed. And Victoria still lived in her luxurious apartment, still had more money than she could spend in several lifetimes. But now she also had real friends. She had purpose. She had a 9-year-old girl who taught her about life and honesty. She had a recovered best friend who kept her honest with herself. One day, Mrs. Jenkins came to visit her at the office. The 68-year-old woman looked around the luxurious space with critical eyes. So this is where you stay when you're not in the slum? Yes, Victoria smiled. What do you think? I think it's too big and too empty. But at least you don't stay here all the time anymore. I don't. I have more important things to do now. Mrs. Jenkins sat in the expensive leather chair and looked Victoria in the eyes. I came here to make a proposal. We want to create a cooperative in Hope Gardens, bring together all the small businesses, buy materials together, sell products together, but we need someone who understands business to help structure this. You're asking for my help. I am, but not money, knowledge, time, guidance. We'll raise the money ourselves with dignity, but your experience, that would be useful. Victoria felt her heart race. It was a challenge different from anything she had done before. It wasn't about making money. It was about empowering people to earn their own money. When do we start? Tomorrow, and every afternoon for the next 3 months. Can you do that? Victoria looked at the packed schedule on her computer. all the meetings and appointments that seemed so important a year ago, but now seemed empty. I can. I'll do it. In the following 3 months, Victoria worked with the community to structure the cooperative. It was hard work, full of challenges, tough negotiations, frustrating bureaucracy, but it was the most rewarding work she had ever done. The cooperative started small, just 10 local businesses, but together they managed to negotiate better prices, reach bigger customers, create a recognized brand. In 1 year, the cooperative had 50 members and was generating stable income for dozens of families. Patricia improved significantly with the treatment. She wasn't completely cured. There was still a long road ahead, but she was strong enough to start working again. And her first job was as a business ethics consultant for Victoria's company. "You're paying me to tell you when you're being an idiot?" Patricia laughed when Victoria offered the position. "Basically, someone needs to do that." "What if I say you're being an idiot in front of the whole board?" Then I was probably being an idiot and need to stop. Working together was an adjustment. There were moments of tension, old wounds that occasionally reopened, disagreements about approaches, but there was also mutual respect, deep knowledge of each other, and a genuine willingness to do right. One day, during a particularly difficult meeting, a shareholder confronted Victoria. "You destroyed this company. Look at the numbers. We fell 30% in profits." "Look at the other numbers," Victoria replied calmly. Employee turnover dropped 70%, customer satisfaction rose 40%, positive media coverage increased 200%, and our profits are growing again, just sustainably now. "That doesn't matter. Profit is what matters. No, ethical profit is what matters. And if you can't see the difference, then maybe you're in the wrong company." The shareholder left the meeting furious, but others stayed, agreeing that the new direction, though painful, was the future. Lily turned 10 and got a party that brought together 2 worlds, the community from the slum and the new friends Victoria had brought into their lives. It was chaotic and loud and perfect. Seeing businessmen in suits talking with street vendors, seeing women in high heels dancing with barefoot children, was surreal but beautiful. In the middle of the party, Lily approached Victoria. "You know what I like most about you?" "What, little one?" "You messed up badly, like really badly. But you admitted it and tried to fix it. That's harder than never making mistakes." From those childlike lips came words of impressive wisdom. "How did you get so wise at just 10 years old?" "My mom. She always says everyone makes mistakes, but only real people admit them and change. Your mom is very wise." "Yeah, and you're getting wiser too, slowly, but you are." Victoria laughed, hugging the girl who had changed her life without even realizing it. A year and a half after the night of the gala, Victoria was on her balcony looking out at the city when Margaret joined her. "Do you regret it? All that you lost? All the relationships you destroyed to get where you were?" "Every day," Victoria admitted, "but I regret more the time I wasted before changing. Years building an empty empire when I could have built something meaningful. But you're building that now." "Yes, late, but better late than never." "And Patricia, how are things between you?" Victoria smiled. "It's good. Not perfect. We still have our moments. But it's real. And that's what matters." There was a comfortable silence before Margaret spoke again. "I need to tell you something about why I really stayed all these years, even when you were at your worst. You said it was because you saw who I was before. That was true. But it wasn't everything. Vicky, I also made terrible mistakes in my life. I also hurt people to get ahead. And when I started working for you, I saw my own past reflected. I stayed because I was hoping that if you could change, maybe it meant I could redeem myself somehow too." Victoria looked at her assistant, seeing her in a completely new light. "You never talked about this. There was no need. But now, seeing you really change, I feel like I can finally forgive myself too. Margaret, you've been my rock through all this. I don't know what I would have done without you. Probably crumbled and gone back to old habits, but you didn't. And that's all you, not me." It was in that moment that Victoria realized the transformation wasn't just hers. It was creating ripples that touched everyone around her. allowing others to transform too. The Hope Gardens Cooperative grew beyond all expectations. What started as a small project became a model for other communities. Victoria began to be invited to speak about social entrepreneurship, about how companies could be profitable and ethical at the same time. At one of these talks, a young businessman raised his hand. "Ms. Reynolds, how did you convince your shareholders to accept lower profits?" "I didn't. Some left, but I attracted new shareholders who value more than just numbers on paper. And for those who stayed, I proved over time that ethics and profit aren't mutually exclusive." "But aren't you afraid of going bankrupt trying to be too good?" "I'm more afraid of succeeding by being bad. What's the point of having billions but not being able to sleep at night? Of having everything but no one who truly knows you and likes who you are?" The answer generated applause, but Victoria knew not everyone was convinced. That was okay. It wasn't her job to convince the whole world, just to do her part. 2 years after that fateful night, Patricia received the news everyone had hoped for, but feared. There was a compatible donor for the liver transplant. It was risky, but it was the best chance for a full recovery. The night before the surgery, Patricia asked to speak with Victoria alone. "If something goes wrong tomorrow," "It won't. But if it does, I need you to promise me something. Take care of Lily, not as charity but as family. Teach her to be strong but kind, ambitious but ethical. Show her that it's possible to succeed without losing your soul. Nothing will go wrong, but if it does, I promise, Lily will be my priority. She always will be. And Vicky, thank you for coming back, for changing, for being the friend I always knew you could be. I should thank you for giving me a second chance I didn't deserve, for teaching me that redemption is possible." The surgery was long and complicated. Victoria, Lily, and the entire Hope Gardens community waited anxiously for news. It was 12 hours of fear, prayer, hope. When the doctor finally came out, his tired face lit up with a smile. The surgery was a success. Patricia is stable and recovering well. The relief was so intense that Victoria felt her legs weaken. Lily cried with happiness, hugged by Mrs. Jenkins. Margaret held Victoria's hand, sharing the moment without words. The recovery was slow and sometimes painful, but Patricia improved every day. And through it all, Victoria was there, not because she felt obligated, but because she wanted to be, because it was where she belonged. 3 months after the surgery, Patricia was strong enough for an outing. Victoria took her, along with Lily, back to the Plaza Hotel, where it had all begun. They stood at the entrance, looking at the spot where the card had fallen over 2 years earlier. "Remember that night?" Victoria asked. "How could I forget?" Patricia smiled. "The night my daughter had the courage to enter a place where she didn't belong, just to return something that wasn't hers. The night that changed everything." Lily, now 11 and taller, looked at the hotel and then at the 2 women. "You know what's funny? If I hadn't gone in, if I had just left the card there or given it to the security guard, none of this would have happened. You 2 would still be apart. My mum would still be sick without treatment. And you," she looked at Victoria, "would still be alone and unhappy, even with all your money." "You're right," Victoria agreed. "Everything changed because you had the courage to do the right thing, even when it was hard. You taught me that, little one. A 9-year-old taught me what adults spend their whole lives trying to learn." "It wasn't just me," Lily protested. "You chose to learn. Many people wouldn't have listened." It was true. Victoria could have simply given Lily money and gone on with her party, forgetting the girl and her mother. She could have closed that door like she had closed so many others. But something that night, maybe the way Lily refused the money, maybe hearing Patricia's name after so many years, something made her stop and really see. "Let's go in," Patricia suggested. "I want to have coffee in that fancy hotel and see if it's as good as it looks from the outside." They went in together, 3 women from different worlds but united now by choice and love. The maitre d' led them to a table, and if he thought it was strange to see Victoria Reynolds, the reformed billionaire, having coffee with a simple woman and a girl from the slums, he was wise enough not to show it. As they drank coffee and ate expensive pastries, Lily asked a question. What would you have done if I had taken the money that night? If I had been like everyone else, you know? Victoria thought carefully. Honestly, I probably would have forgotten you in 5 minutes. Just another person wanting something from me. But you didn't want anything, just a glass of water and to do the right thing. And that made me stop and think for the first time in years. So all this happened because I was thirsty, Lily joked. The three laughed, a genuine sound of joy that echoed through the luxurious hall. In the months that followed, life found a new rhythm. Victoria balanced her work at the company with social projects in Hope Gardens. Patricia, fully recovered, worked part-time as an ethics consultant and spent the rest of her time with Lily. The girl went to a good school now, but still sold flowers occasionally, not because she needed to, but because she didn't want to forget her roots. One day during a cooperative meeting, a new member expressed frustration. Why do we have to do everything the hard way? Why don't we just take big loans and grow fast? Mrs. Jenkins answered before Victoria could. Because fast growth without a strong foundation collapses. Because dignity matters more than speed. Because we've seen what happens when people take shortcuts thinking they're clever. Look at Vicky over there. She took every shortcut and reached the top, and she was miserable. We do things differently. The young man looked at Victoria, expecting her to disagree, but she just nodded in agreement. Mrs. Jenkins is right. I built an empire in record time, and nearly lost my soul in the process. You're building something better even if it takes longer. These lessons repeated constantly. Victoria discovered that teaching others about business ethics forced her to maintain her own high standards. It was easy to slip back into old habits when nobody was watching, but with an entire community counting on her to set the example, she couldn't afford to fail. There were setbacks, of course. Some suppliers tried to take advantage of the company's new ethical approach. Some employees interpreted the kinder policies as weakness. Some customers left for less scrupulous competitors. Each of these moments was a test, a temptation to return to the old methods. But whenever Victoria felt that temptation, she thought of Lily refusing the money. She thought of Patricia choosing dignity over pride. She thought of Mrs. Jenkins and the whole community that had trusted her with their dreams. 3 years after that gala night, Victoria's company was unrecognizable. Not in size, it had actually shrunk, but in culture. It was a place where people wanted to work, where suppliers wanted to do business, where customers knew they were supporting something ethical. And the profits? Eventually they returned. Not to the astronomical levels of before, but to something sustainable. Victoria had less money now, but was infinitely richer in everything that mattered. One day, a journalist requested an interview. She was doing a story about women who had drastically changed their lives. Ms. Reynolds, what would you say to someone considering making radical changes in their life but is afraid? I'd say fear is natural and valid. Real change is scary. But living a life that contradicts your values is even scarier. And true transformation doesn't happen overnight. It's a daily process of choosing differently. And if you could go back in time, would you do things differently from the start? Victoria thought about the question. Part of me wants to say yes, that I'd avoid all the mistakes and pain I caused, but the truth is, I don't know if I would have learned the lessons without going through all that. My mistakes taught me, my fall humbled me, my redemption transformed me. I wish I hadn't hurt so many people, but I can't change the past. I can only do better now. The interview was published and went viral. People from across the country wrote, sharing their own transformation stories, asking for advice, seeking inspiration. Victoria responded to each message personally, knowing every person deserved to be seen and heard. One of these messages came from a young CEO facing the same temptations Victoria had faced years earlier. I have a chance to make a fortune, but I know it will require compromising my ethics. Everyone says that's how the world works, that I have to play the game. But something inside me resists. What would you do in my place? Victoria replied honestly, I can't tell you what to do, but I can tell you this. The money you earn by betraying your ethics will feel good at first. It will buy beautiful houses, expensive cars, superficial respect. But it won't buy you peace of mind. It won't buy you real relationships. It won't buy you true love or genuine friendship or the ability to look in the mirror And like the person you see, I had to learn that the hard way. That. You don't have to make the same mistakes. Be smarter than I was. The young CEO replied weeks later, saying he had refused the questionable deal and found an alternative path. He wouldn't be as rich, but he would sleep well at night. These small victories added up, each person choosing differently, creating ripples that touched other lives. Lily grew up during those years, transforming from a serious girl into an even more serious young teenager. She was 14 now and had developed an intense interest in business law. "I want to create laws that make companies ethical," she explained one day. "It shouldn't be a choice. It should be mandatory." "Do you think you can force people to be good?" Victoria Reynolds asked, curious. "No, but you can force them to follow minimum standards and create incentives to go beyond. Like, companies that pay fair wages pay less taxes. Companies that exploit people pay more. That way it makes financial sense to be ethical." It was an interesting idea, full of flaws and complications, but it showed that Lily was thinking big. Victoria supported her, connecting her with lawyers and economists who could help develop these ideas. Patricia Wilson watched her daughter with obvious pride. "She's going to change the world, isn't she?" "Yes, she's already started, by changing mine." "Our world," Patricia corrected. "She changed our world, and now she's ready to change bigger worlds." It was a beautiful Sunday afternoon when Victoria received an unexpected call. It was the shareholder who had stormed out of the meeting years ago. "Victoria, it's Richard. I know we haven't spoken since I left the company so dramatically." "I remember. What can I do for you?" "Actually, it's about what you can teach. My company is facing problems. We have high profits, but very high turnover, labor lawsuits, a bad reputation, and I realized we're repeating the mistakes you fixed. Would you be willing to advise me?" Victoria could have gotten revenge. She could have rejected the request or charged exorbitant fees. But she remembered how Patricia had welcomed her despite everything. "I can, but it won't be easy and it will hurt your wallet in the short term. I'm ready. I can't go on like this." The following months were intense, working with Richard to reshape his company. It was like reliving her own journey, seeing someone go through the same resistance, the same fears, the same revelations. But in the end, Richard's company began to transform too. "How do you handle the pressure?" Richard asked one day. "Every day someone questions your decisions, saying you're being soft, that you're destroying the business. I have a 14-year-old girl who keeps me honest. I have a friend who survived much worse than corporate pressure. I have a community that believes in me. These things matter more than the opinions of people who will never understand. I don't have that. Then build it. Find your people, your reasons, your whys, because without them, you'll eventually give up and go back to the old ways." Richard took the advice seriously. He started getting more involved with his employees, visiting the community around his factory, really seeing the people affected by his decisions. It wasn't an instant transformation, but it was real. 5 years after that fateful night, Victoria was invited to speak at a leadership conference. The theme was Ethical Leadership in a Cynical World. She accepted, but with one condition. She wanted to bring Lily and Patricia with her. On stage, the three told the story together. Lily spoke about growing up in poverty, but with dignity. Patricia Wilson spoke about forgiveness and second chances. Victoria Reynolds spoke about transformation and redemption. Together, they painted a picture of how different lives could intertwine to create something greater than the sum of their parts. The audience was in absolute silence, absorbing every word. When they finished, the applause was deafening. But what touched Victoria most were the people who came to speak afterward, sharing their own stories, their own fears, their own hopes for change. A woman around 70 years old approached, tears streaming down her face. "My story is similar to yours. I betrayed my best friend over business 40 years ago. I never had the courage to ask for forgiveness, and she passed away 5 years ago. I've lived with this burden ever since. You've given me hope that I can at least help other people, even if it's too late to fix my own mistake." Victoria hugged the woman, feeling the shared weight of past mistakes. "It's never too late to start doing things differently. Your friend is gone, but you're still here. Honor her memory by living in a way that would make her proud. The woman nodded, squeezing Victoria's hand before leaving, a new determination in her steps. Moments like these multiplied. Each person who heard the story and decided to do things differently was another wave in the ocean of change. Victoria had started out thinking she was just fixing her own life, but realized she was part of something much bigger. Margaret retired that year, not because she was tired, but because she wanted to dedicate her time completely to social projects. She had discovered a passion for teaching other assistants and mid-level employees to have a voice and advocate for ethics in corporate environments. "You showed me that it's never too late to make your life mean something," Margaret said on her last official day. "I spent decades being just an efficient assistant. Now I can be someone who makes a real difference." "You always made a difference, Margaret. You were my conscience when I didn't have one of my own. And now you have your own. My work here is done." But Margaret didn't really leave. She still visited regularly, still advised when asked, still was part of the strange and wonderful family that had formed around that fateful night. The Hope Gardens Cooperative grew beyond all expectations, becoming a national model. Other communities began copying the model, creating their own cooperatives, their own mutual support networks. It wasn't a solution to all the problems of poverty, but it was a start. Lily, now 16, was being courted by prestigious universities. She had excellent grades and an impressive resume of community activism, but she was divided about where to go. "I want to stay close. The community still needs me." "The community will always be here," Patricia said, "but you need to grow, learn, expand your horizons so you can come back with more tools to help." "What if I change? What if I go to a fancy university and become one of those people who forget where they came from?" Victoria laughed. "Lily, you're the most grounded person I know. A degree won't change that, but it will give you tools to make bigger changes." "Do you really think so?" "I know it. You taught me honesty when you were 9. Imagine what you can teach the world with proper education behind it." Lily decided to accept the spot at a public university in New York City with a full scholarship. She would be close enough to visit regularly, but far enough to have her own experience. It was the perfect balance. On the day Lily left for university, half of Hope Gardens came to say goodbye. There were tears, hugs, promises to keep in touch. Mrs. Jenkins gave her an embroidered handkerchief. "My grandmother gave this to me when I left my small town. Now it's yours. When you miss home, hold this and remember there's always a place that loves you." Lily hugged the elderly woman, crying freely now. "I'll make you proud, I promise." "You already do, girl. You already do." Victoria and Patricia took Lily to the university dormitory, helping her get settled. It was a small and simple room, but it felt like a palace compared to what Lily had grown up used to. "Are you sure you'll be okay?" Patricia asked for the 10th time. "Mom, I'll be great. You raised me to be strong, remember?" "I did. But a mother always worries." After they left the dormitory, Patricia finally let the tears fall. "She grew up so fast, Vicky. It feels like just yesterday she was a baby in my arms, and now she's in university. You did an amazing job with her, Patty." "We did. You're as much a part of her life as I am now. Thank you for coming back when you did." It was a bittersweet moment, full of pride and longing, but also full of hope for the future. In the following months, Victoria discovered a new rhythm of life. With Lily in university and Margaret retired, she had more time to reflect on what came next. She was 50 now, still young in many ways, but old enough to know that time was precious. She decided to write a book. Not a typical business manual, but an honest story about her journey, her mistakes, her lessons. She wrote about the girl she had been, ambitious and full of dreams, about the woman she became, hard and isolated in her success, and about the transformation that a child with a gold card had started. The book took 2 years to complete. Patricia edited it, Margaret gave feedback, Lily contributed her own chapter about growing up in poverty, but with wealth of character. When it was finally published, it became a bestseller immediately. But the book's success brought a new challenge. Suddenly, Victoria was iconic, a symbol of business redemption. People wanted to turn her into a saint, ignore her past mistakes, paint her as a heroine from the start. "This bothers me," she confessed to Patricia one day. "I'm not a heroine. I was terrible for years. I don't deserve to be idolized." Then don't let them. Keep telling the truth even when it's uncomfortable. Remind people that transformation is possible but not easy, and that past mistakes don't disappear just because you've changed. "Do you think I've redeemed myself for the mistakes I made?" Patricia thought carefully before answering. "I think redemption isn't a destination. It's an ongoing journey. You don't complete redemption, and that's it. You choose every day to be better than you were yesterday. Some days you succeed, other days you fail, but you keep trying. That's redemption." These words became Victoria's mantra. On difficult days, when she was tempted to fall back into old habits, when she was tired of always doing the right thing, she remembered that redemption was a daily choice. Lily flourished in university. She became a student leader, organized protests for social justice, started mentorship programs for students from underprivileged communities. But she never forgot her roots, returning to Hope Gardens every chance she got, still selling flowers occasionally, just to keep her feet on the ground. "People here at university don't understand," she told Victoria during a visit. "They come from wealthy families and think they understand poverty because they've read about it in books. But they don't know what it's like to choose between eating or paying the electricity bill. They don't know what it's like to see your mother sick and not be able to do anything. You can teach them, with patience and compassion. Sometimes I don't have patience. Sometimes I just want to scream that they know nothing. That's normal, but remember, you're there to build bridges, not burn them. People can learn if you give them the chance." Lily absorbed the advice, working to find balance between frustration and education. It wasn't easy, but it was important. 8 years after that gala night, a special event was organized in Hope Gardens. The community wanted to celebrate everything that had been achieved, all the transformations that had occurred. The event would be held exactly where Patricia's birthday party had happened years earlier, in the same shared backyard. But this time, it was much bigger. Tents were set up, a local band was hired, food was prepared by various community cooks. It wasn't a luxurious gala party, but it was authentic and full of love. Victoria was helping with the preparations when Mrs. Jenkins approached. "Do you know why we're doing this?" "To celebrate, to show that change is possible, so other communities can see and think, if they managed, we can too, and to thank you, not for the money but for listening, for learning, for staying. I should be thanking you. You saved me as much as I helped you." Then we're equals, and that's the most important thing you learned, that helping isn't charity from top to bottom, it's partnership from equal to equal. The party was magical. People from everywhere Victoria had touched came, employees from her company, members of other cooperatives, readers of her book, students Lily had mentored. It was a mosaic of intertwined lives, all connected somehow to that night when a girl returned a card. In the middle of the party, Victoria, Patricia, and Lily climbed onto the makeshift stage. 8 years ago, Victoria began, my card fell at a gala. I didn't even notice. But a 9-year-old girl noticed and had the courage to enter a place where she didn't belong, to do the right thing. That simple act of honesty started a chain of events that transformed not just my life, but hundreds of other lives. Lily continued, I didn't enter that party thinking I would change anything. I just wanted to return the card because my mother taught me that's the right thing to do. But I learned that small acts of integrity can have enormous consequences, and that we never know who we're inspiring with our choices. Patricia finished. This community always knew how to help itself. We always shared what we had, even when it was little. But what Victoria brought us wasn't just resources, it was recognition. She saw our strength, our value, our dignity, and helped us transform that into something bigger. Together we proved that it's possible to do business ethically, grow with integrity, succeed without exploiting. The crowd applauded, not just for them, but for everyone there who was part of the transformation. After the speeches, music filled the air and people began dancing. Victoria watched the scene, trying to memorize every detail. Young and old dancing together, rich and poor sharing food, business people talking with street vendors. It was the world as it should be. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Margaret appeared beside her. "It's perfect. And to think it almost didn't happen. If you had simply given money to Lily and continued with your party, none of this would exist." "It wasn't a choice, it was luck. I was at the right moment in my life, hurt enough to finally listen. Call it what you want. Destiny, luck, timing. In the end, you chose to change. And that's what matters." It was true. Victoria could have ignored the signs, could have turned back, could have given up when it got difficult. But she didn't give up. And the reward was all around her, in every smiling face, in every story of transformation. Lily graduated with honors 3 years later in business law. Her graduation speech was about ethics, dignity, and the power of small acts of integrity. Victoria and Patricia were in the audience, crying with pride. After graduation, Lily received offers from major law firms with impressive salaries, but she turned them all down. "I'm going to open my own practice," she announced, focused on helping small businesses and cooperatives navigate legal issues. "It won't make me rich, but it'll make a difference." Victoria Reynolds wasn't surprised. It was exactly the kind of choice Lily would make. "Need an investor?" "It has to be ethical investment," Lily joked. "Of course, with fair returns and transparent terms." "Then we have a deal." Lily's law practice grew slowly but steadily. She hired other lawyers who shared her vision, creating a work culture that balanced profit with purpose. It was exactly the kind of business Victoria and Patricia Wilson had dreamed of creating when they were young. 10 years after that fateful night, Victoria sold her company. Not because it was failing, but because she had done what she needed to do there. She had transformed the culture, proven that ethics and profit could coexist, trained new leaders to continue the work. With the proceeds from the sale, she created a permanent fund to support ethical cooperatives and small businesses. Not as charity, but as investment. Money loaned at fair interest rates, with mentorship included, expecting the businesses to succeed and pay the support forward. Patricia became the fund's director, using her experience and wisdom to identify entrepreneurs with potential and integrity. Lily provided free legal support to all the fund's beneficiaries. It was a complete cycle, each contributing their unique skills to something bigger. At one of the fund's anniversaries, a young entrepreneur approached Victoria with tears in his eyes. "Hi, you don't know me, but 3 years ago you invested in my furniture manufacturing business when all the banks turned me down. Today I employ 20 people and have managed to repay the entire loan, and now I want to invest in someone else's business, pay forward what you did for me." These moments multiplied. Each person helped helping another, creating a network of mutual support that spread further than any one of them could have created alone. Mrs. Jenkins passed away at 78, peacefully in her sleep. Her funeral gathered hundreds of people, all with stories about how she had impacted their lives. Victoria gave the eulogy, speaking about wisdom, kindness, and the strength of a woman who never had much but always gave everything. "Mrs. Jenkins taught me that wealth isn't about how much you have, but how much you share. That power isn't about controlling others, but about lifting others up. And that a life well lived isn't measured in money or status, but in how many lives you've touched positively." Mrs. Jenkins' death was a painful reminder that time is finite, that opportunities don't last forever. Victoria redoubled her efforts, knowing she needed to do as much good as she could while she still could. 12 years after that gala night, Victoria, Patricia, and Lily were invited to speak at the United Nations about sustainable economic development models. It was surreal to be there, 3 ordinary women from a developing country sharing their story with diplomats and world leaders. But the message remained the same as it had always been, that real change starts with individuals having the courage to do things differently, that ethics and success aren't mutually exclusive, that dignity matters as much as prosperity. The presentation was a success, but the most impactful moment came afterward, when a young diplomat approached them. "My mother made me promise that if I ever met you, I would say thank you. She was a beneficiary of your fund years ago, managed to establish a small restaurant. That restaurant paid for my education, brought me here. I am here today because of you. It was a reminder that impact multiplies in ways we can never fully predict. An extended hand here results in success there, which leads to other opportunities further along. Like ripples in a pond, impossible to predict where they'll reach. Victoria was 62 now, officially part of the older generation. Her hair was grey, her face had lines, but her eyes shone with purpose in a way they never had in her youth. One day, while reviewing proposals for the fund, Patricia asked a question. Do you regret it? All the things you never experienced because you chose this path? What do you mean? You could have kept billions, lived in extreme luxury, traveled the world in private jets. Instead, you donate most of it. Work hard every day, live relatively simply. Don't you ever wonder? Victoria thought carefully. No. I lived that luxurious life for years and was miserable. Yes, I work hard now and have less, but I have you, I have Lily, I have an entire community that truly knows me. I have purpose, meaning, a legacy that matters. That's worth more than any amount of luxury. Even knowing you'll never be as wealthy as you were. Patty, I'm much richer now, just in a way banks don't measure. It was the truth. Victoria had less money in the bank, but more love in her life. Less corporate power, but more positive influence. Fewer employees reporting to her, but more people genuinely caring about her. 15 years after that fateful night, a documentary was made about their journey. The film followed several people whose lives had been touched by the story, showing how a simple act of honesty had created waves of change. There was the woman who started a small food business and now employed 10 people. The man who used a loan from the fund to open a workshop and now trained at-risk youth. The cooperative that grew from 10 members to 200. The numbers told a story, but it was the human faces that truly mattered. The documentary ended by returning to the beginning, to the Plaza Hotel where it all started. The camera focused on the spot where the card had fallen, now marked with a small, discreet plaque that said only, "Where small acts created big changes." Victoria didn't want the plaque, thought it was too self-congratulatory, but Lily insisted. It's not about you. It's about inspiring other people to make their own small acts of integrity, to realize that they matter. The logic was solid, so Victoria allowed it. Lily was 29 now, a respected lawyer and known activist. But she was still the same girl at heart, still sold flowers on her mother's birthday as tradition, still kept her humility despite all her success. Will you ever get married? Have children? Patricia asked one day, hopeful. Maybe. If I find someone who understands that my work is part of who I am, not something I can set aside, and if I have children, I'll raise them the way you raised me, with strong values, even if it means a harder life. Victoria watched the two of them talking and felt deep gratitude, not just for having been forgiven, but for being allowed to be part of this family, these extraordinary lives. A new challenge arose when the country's economy entered a recession. Many of the small businesses the fund supported began to struggle. It would be easy to simply forgive all the loans, but that would create dependency and not solve structural problems. Instead, Victoria, Patricia, and Lily worked with each business individually. They renegotiated terms, provided additional training, connected complementary businesses to collaborate. It was intense work, but it saved most of the businesses. Why not just let them fail? An economist asked during a lecture. That's part of capitalism. Failed businesses should die. Because they're not just businesses, Victoria Reynolds replied. They're people, families, communities, and when you've invested in them, not just financially but emotionally, you can't simply give up when it gets difficult. That's the kind of easy and cowardly leadership I used to practice. The response caused controversy, some agreeing, others accusing her of being anti-market economy. But Victoria no longer cared about these criticisms. She knew what was right. 20 years after that gala night, a special event was organized at the same hotel where it all began. This time, it wasn't an exclusive party for the rich, but a community celebration. The hotel, impressed by the story, offered the space free of charge. The difference was striking. In the same hall where once only designer dresses and expensive suits could enter, there were now people from all social classes together, celebrating not material wealth but wealth of character and transformation. Lily, now 31, took the stage with a special surprise. She had tracked down the security guard who tried to expel her that first night and invited him to the party. The man, now retired, nervously stepped onto the stage. "I wanted to apologize to you," he began, "for trying to throw you out that night. I was just doing my job, but I shouldn't have treated you as something undesirable." "You don't need to apologize," Lily said gently. "You were doing your job, but I want to thank you." "Thank me?" "For giving me a glimpse of how the world treats people like me. It motivated me to work to change that. If you had been kind, maybe I would have just returned the card and left. But your treatment made me angry enough to insist, to make noise, to be noticed. In a way, you helped start all this." It was a perspective nobody had considered. Even the difficult moments, the rejections, the prejudices, had served a purpose in shaping who Lily had become. The party lasted late into the night, with music, dancing, food, and countless stories being shared. It was a celebration not just of 20 years, but of everything that had been built, all the lives changed, all the lessons learned. At the end of the night, Victoria stayed alone in the empty hall for a moment. She walked to the spot where the card had fallen 2 decades earlier and knelt, touching the floor with reverence. "Thank you," she whispered to the universe, to Lily, to Patricia, to everyone who had been part of her journey. "Thank you for giving me a second chance, for showing me it's never too late to change, for teaching me that what truly matters isn't in bank accounts but in human connections." Patricia found Victoria there, recognizing that her friend needed that moment of private reflection. "Ready to go home?" "Yes, let's go home." The two walked out together, not to separate mansions, but to the simple house in Hope Gardens that Victoria had bought years earlier and where she now lived part-time. It was small, modest, but it was a real home because it was full of love. In the following years, the story continued to unfold. New challenges arose, new opportunities appeared, new lives were touched. But the principles remained the same: honesty, integrity, dignity, compassion. Victoria wrote 2 more books, both bestsellers, both honest about failures as well as successes. She became a sought-after mentor, but was selective about who she would mentor, choosing people who genuinely wanted to change, not just improve their public image. Patricia expanded the fund, creating financial and business education programs for people who had never had access to that knowledge. It was true empowerment, not just giving resources, but giving tools to succeed independently. Lily married a public school teacher who shared her values. Together, they continued their social advocacy work, raising a family but never forgetting their commitment to the community. And Hope Gardens, it transformed completely, not into a wealthy enclave, that was never the goal, but into a thriving community where dignity and opportunity were available to everyone. It became a model copied by other communities, living proof that change was possible. 25 years after that gala night, Victoria was sitting on her simple porch, looking at the community that had become her true home. She was 72 now, still active but slowing down. Patricia sat beside her, the two in comfortable silence. "Do you think we did enough?" Victoria asked. "It's never enough. There's always more to do, more people to help, more injustices to fix. But we did what we could with what we had, and we inspired others to do the same. That has to be enough." "Yes, it has to be." Lily appeared with her 3-year-old daughter, the granddaughter Victoria never imagined having but now loved fiercely. The little girl ran into Victoria's lap, chattering about the flowers she had planted in the garden. "Grandma Vicky, when will the flowers grow?" "With patience and care, my little one. All good things take time." It was a lesson Victoria had learned too late, but was determined to teach early to this new generation. That real success wasn't measured in speed or volume of money, but in integrity kept people loved, lives positively touched. The sun began to set, tinting the sky orange and pink. It was the end of another day, but not the end of the journey. The story would continue. The ripples created by that gold card would keep spreading, touching lives Victoria would never know, inspiring changes she would never witness. But she was at peace. Because she had done what she could, she had changed what she was capable of changing. She had transformed from a person who took everything to a person who gave. And that transformation, more than any corporate empire, was her true legacy. End of story. Now tell me what you thought of this story and where you're watching from. Did you enjoy seeing how a small act of honesty can change everything? Leave in the comments if you think Victoria truly managed to redeem herself from her past actions. Your opinion is very important to us. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. There are many more exciting stories waiting for you here.